Live Oaks. So this is kind of a funny map. I think it normally goes the same every time, but in a kind of a good way, in like a fair way, I'd say. Heavy tanks go here normally, try to play this area. Northern spawn goes here, tries more to play this whole area, so they somehow have the village advantage. Also, they have some light tanks normally standing around in this areas here, while the southern spawn somehow has not so good light tank positions, a little bit around the swamp sometimes. But whole swamp is still a mysterious place, because light tanks can somehow occur in the most crazy bushes. But yeah, let's talk about a little bit the tank destroyers, which are normally waiting just here in this area. This map is normally dominated by tank destroyers, somehow standing here, depending on how late the game is, or just here and wait for the enemy team to come. If you have a southern spawn, you go through the south, and then you have this big area here, where it can come to a battle, but the northern part actually has a disadvantage here, as far as I think, because you can go up here and then like play hull down against them as well, even by shooting them from here also. And if you win this, you can just go under the bridge, and if they don't have so many light tanks maybe around this area or even in the swamp, you can go up here and then play hull down through some bushes and make pressure to the enemy team. From the northern part, the big problem is you have to win the city, and then if you win the city, you can't really push here, because where enemy light tanks, medium tanks can sit here, or tank destroyers as well, and hold off your aggressive push. So you might even win the city, but then just be able to hold this area here, and then you have to wait until the enemy comes, so you can hold them off in this bushy area. Or yeah, last resort is normally standing here somehow and play against the enemies, which are like getting more spread out in this parts. But if you have sometimes tank destroyers still standing here, you can give them a hard time, depending on how mobile you are. Still, Live Oaks, yeah, being kind of always the same and not so easy to play, especially for the northern spawn. I still enjoy it somehow. It's more mobile, it's not so campy, and light tanks even can make a big impact here. So I would put Live Oaks actually, well, if not for the heavy tanks, maybe for every other tank. It's difficult because of that city area, which can be really frustrating to play. Let's say it's B tier. I think that's a fine place for Live Oaks. Sirene Coast, which I think should be Canada, or resemble Canada. Interesting map, but the heavies are suffering greatly here. They normally try to go down here, and then they are just stuck, and they can't do anything. This is a really useless area for heavy tanks, kind of. Snipers will sit here, and it's really hard to push through here and make a bigger impact. But if it works, then the enemy team is under high pressure. But before that, you just stand there and you can't really do much, because artillery is shitting on you all the time. Medium and light tanks in this area tend to try to play a little bit here. Also in this area for the northern spawn. Also medium hull down tanks have a big impact, because this area is very important. You can shoot from there through most parts of the map, or at least half of the map. So interesting position here. Sadly, I think this whole thing just becomes playable in late game, when there are not so many tanks anymore. They are trying to snipe, for example, from this position or from those positions here. And also that central area sometimes try to be played by light tanks. More easy, I think, from the southern spawn. Because yeah, you're kind of stuck here with light tanks in those little more building areas, or you can make your way somehow through here, but then you have the problem you might be forced to go in here, and sometimes enemy tanks are already sitting at this position, able to be following you into that valley area. All in all, not such a bad map. The thing is, you can outcamp the enemies in the northern area if you just sit in this area at the end of the game. It's not so easy from the south spawn, where you just normally have this area or this area. And I don't know, it just turned out to be not so effective also a little bit here, but normally the enemy, I don't know how, but they make it pretty fast normally up here, and then they are standing in this whole area and pretty close to the base, and yeah, normally then the heavy flank also breaks together, I don't know why. Yeah, difficult map to play, but interesting one. Definitely one of the better ones in the World of Tanks. So Sirene Coast, would we put it even one of the better maps? Yeah, well, the heavy tanks are suffering, it's like a Live Oaks, sadly the heavy tanks are suffering pretty greatly. So, yeah, to be fair, I have to put it in B tier because of that. Chinese Wall, and this is the point where people might think, now I'm completely crazy, but I actually like this map, even though many people are hating on it, and I understand absolutely why. I like the way the map is played, like always the same, but it's not the outcome which is always the same, or the winning team is always decided immediately. It's not the case. It's just that you have like some things you can do only. For example, the southern part, you go normally with a faster tank just up here, and then you can spot the enemy tanks from this position, and if they are coming too much, if they are coming too many of them, you just try to fall down a little bit more, or even go back into safer areas, maybe around this part where people like to camp. If you're starting from the northern part, some heavy tanks are like to go then up here, which I think is a bad idea because you get spotted and flanked normally. Or you go further to the heavy lane, and then you fight around this area. And there's no winning in this, because this whole open area here can be shot by tank destroyers, which also like to stay around this area. So I think from the northern part it's actually better to go up here and to try to play this, or even to stay around here and try to spot some enemies, because normally the southern team also likes then to go up here, and then you can outspot them from this area and maybe even push further. And yeah, sometimes medium tanks from the southern team also go up here, but I think they somehow have a disadvantage, I don't know why. But even if the red team, for example, wins this and goes up here, you can just fall back and then try to outcamp in this area. The same way you can camp around this area. If blue team, for example, manages to go through here, then they still have the problem that they have to go through this little area with the buildings and have to fight against the tank destroyers or medium tanks, which might be standing here. I think it's still not a hard map to play. I think the strategy is pretty easy, more or less, with sometimes also light tanks playing around in this area here. But all in all, for me it's fun to play. I'm always excited when I spawn on this map, because I know it's not going to be like a crazy battle, but I know what I can do. Many people are complaining because you can get outspotted really easy, because if you, for example, lose the northern part and you don't have many people defending, you get outspotted immediately. We just drive here and your whole team, for example, is still sitting in this area and they are not fast enough, or they are going up here. I think this is always a bad idea, and they are just not fast enough to go back. Of course, you're depending on your team. You should have normally some faster tanks which are still alive and then maybe go back and help defending the base. It's not always the case, we all know that. But yeah, I don't think that's the specific map problem. So I like Chinese Wall. For the fun part, I would put it in A tier, but I know the problem with being outcamped, or outcapped actually, is existing, and that's not a problem of the map. I think it's more a problem of the players, but in the end, there are just two ways where you can go, and yeah, the map is just not complex enough, I think, to be any higher than B tier, sadly. So let's talk about Tundra. That map is kind of a pain. Because normally people are like rushing, for example, from the northern part up here, and they can't do anything. We're rushing from the south, they can't do anything. It's just a standoff situation here. Sometimes light tanks are trying a little bit to play around this area, and your big fat heavy tanks, wrong color, they are going to the west part. And there's a little bit more going on here. I think the fights between the heavy tanks are somehow more interesting in this part. But yeah, sometimes mid-game you have the opportunity to play a little bit more into this direction. I wouldn't recommend it from the south part. I don't know why this area here is not so easy to play, I think, from the southern spawn. But this is definitely a place where you can go in mid or late game and do a little bit more. Also, if it's late game, sometimes you can go through here and then up here, or help the team to outflank the enemy. Same goes, of course, for the other part, but you always have the problem that in this area, sometimes tank destroyers are like annoying you when you go any further, or they are already sitting up here for some crazy reason. You have some campers always playing here, which is a little bit annoying, but they can't do so much actually. Just if red team, for example, really comes over here, then they can be active. Otherwise, they have to make up their mind if they rather would like to just outcamp the aggressive team coming, for example, up here from this area. Well, it's definitely not such a stale map than other maps, but you know normally what will happen. And either your team will win east or west flank, and then you just have to adapt to the situation. Nothing too crazy, but yeah, I think it's, because it's a kind of a small map, relatively playable for every type of class, but light tanks definitely suffer on this map. So I don't think it's any worse than Chinese Wall, that's for sure. It's not one of the best maps. Because of a very important part in the east, which is so annoying to be dominated, somehow you just have to play Helldown Cupola sniping the whole time. But I'd rather go to the western part actually, or to wait till mid or late game to then outflank the enemy team. But I think it's a okay B tier choice. So I don't want to make this video too long, that's why I will cut it here. There will be around 4 to 5 maps with every episode I will discuss. I hope it will be helpful for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will tune in next time. Thanks guys for watching, and cheers bros.